Today on the BCP Show, we talk with Kevin Berchelmann. We believe that leadership is the number one most important function of any business owner. And Kevin says that while some things have changed over the generations, leadership still comes down to a few key elements that will never change. All that and much more coming up. You're listening to the Blue Collar Proud Show, and you, my friends, are in Proud Nation.
It's the Blue Collar Proud Show, the show for business owners who are building businesses they can be proud of. Because having a strong business means a better life for you and your community. That's what it means to be blue collar proud. And now, here's your hosts, Carter Harkins and Taylor Hill.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the BCP Show, the Blue Collar Proud Show, the show that is all about having and living the blue collar business dream. If you're out there in the world and you have a blue collar business or a dream to build one that gives you more of what you want in this life, with the blood, sweat, and tears that you invest, you can build that business. And Taylor and I want to be a part of that journey to your success. My name is Carter Harkins. With me every single week across the table here for the podcast is Taylor Hill.
How are you today?
I'm good. And we've got some other reviews. Believe it or not, this is the second week in a row.
Ooh.
We're bringing some reviews out.
Man, we'll hit the Oscars or the Emmys or something one of these days.
So I actually had our team go back and pull some reviews for me that I hadn't seen yet. This one goes back a ways, okay, but we never read it on the air, I don't think, and so I want to do that now.
Okay.
And then we also have some great feedback from the. Well, actually, I've got three different ones today. I've got a comment that came in through the website, the review on iTunes, and then another one from the Blue Collar Proud Nation Facebook group.
Well, keep those coming because, that's why we keep showing up.
Yes, absolutely. So this one on iTunes says, this is a long overdue review for Taylor and Carter's podcast, The Guys in Trucks Show. So that'll tell you how long ago this was.
Wow, it was, yeah.
Sorry. Says, I've listened to every one of these episodes and can't say how much great stuff I have learned from these guys and their guests. This is a great resource for anyone in the home services business. I also recommend these guys' services at Spark Marketer, who have helped me and my son in our startup company. Keep up the great work, guys. And this is from Tom. You remember when Tom and his son came and spent a day with you and here at Spark Marketer? It was actually a part of Blue Collar University, Mark Stoner's program that he does that brings people to Nashville to come spend some time with him at his business, learn a little bit about the way he runs his business, looking at their SOPs and the systems and things they've put in place to help build a successful service business. But then there's an extra day that people can get, which is with you.
Yeah, and it was funny because Tom was like, man, I had no idea that you were going to take what Mark went through with us and then actually pull it over here and then create, this is what you got to do in the marketing part to get this. He didn't realize how much that those two things came together. So I think he and his son were blown away a little bit about what we did and how we did it. And, a lot of people don't know that I used to work in the entertainment industry. And so one of the things that I did is work in the accounting office and in movies. So what you do is you actually start a movie, and it's like starting a business, and then you run it while production is going, and then after production, you shut it down. And so I have a pretty good background in what you got to do to do some of this
for
stuff.
Startup. Yeah. So, Tom, thank you for that 5-star review. I appreciate it, and I apologize that we're just now getting around to reading it on the show. But thank you for listening. I really appreciate that. If you want to leave a review on iTunes, it's real easy to do. But if you're already subscribed, don't look for it in your subscription. You've got to do another new search for Blue Collar Proud Show in the podcasts app or in iTunes on your computer. Do a search for Blue Collar Proud Show. It'll pop up. There'll be about 5 of the most recent episodes at the top, and then below that is a larger icon for the podcast, for the show. Click that icon, and it'll take you to a page that'll show you the description of the show and all of the episodes, and there's a tab at the top that says Reviews. Click the Reviews tab, and then you're in the right place to be able to leave us a review. And please do that for us. That's how we know that we're serving you well, doing a good job, bringing you the content that is helping you grow your business. Okay, here's one from the website. It's actually in response to, this is a follow-up. So I don't know if you remember a few weeks ago, we did an episode where there was a check-in with reality, and we talked about, it was someone who wrote in under the name Batman. And Batman wanted to know whether or not he should take an opportunity that had been given to him to testify as an expert witness in a case that pertained to his expertise in bat removal. So we had some advice for him, some things to talk about. He actually responded through the website. He said, "Hey, Taylor and Carter, thanks for the advice on being called to the stand as an expert witness. Great stuff to take into consideration. Great show. Keep up the good work, Batman." And then he says, "P.S." and I love this. "This is written in the Batman voice." So, this is written in the Batman voice.
Awesome. That's great.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So if you are interested in giving us topics for the Check-In with Reality segment of the show, you can do that. Just simply go over to bcpshow.com/reality. There you'll find a form. You'll be able to leave us any kind of question, anything you want us to address on the show, a topic, whatever. Throw that in that form right there. We get those, and believe me, we do read them, and we do appreciate those who are willing to allow us to take real feedback from listeners and make that a part of the show. One other comment, and this is from the Blue Collar Proud Nation Facebook group. This was added to the episode takeaway post for the show that we had Jake Loeffler on. Jake was a great interview, a multiple business owner who really has been able to own and run successful multiple businesses at the same time because of the systems that he's put in place. So this was a takeaway from Bob. Bob said his big takeaway was the financial value of having written SOPs. SOPs stand for Standard Operating Procedures, for those of you without a military background. And then he also said the new hire training from the servant franchise opportunity was something that he found very valuable. So appreciate that, Bob, for leaving that comment. The financial value, I think this is the reason I chose this comment to read, was because what he's not talking about just how a good SOP makes your life easier and how it prevents, the same questions coming up over and over and over again with your employees and having to be involved in every decision and all of that, but how there's an actual financial value to having those SOPs, that having them makes your business more valuable. Oh, yeah. I thought that was great.
Well, I think there's a financial value in two different ways. I think having, anytime you have a system, anytime that you can't sell a company today if you don't have a system. Period. Right. You just, you're kidding yourself if you do that.
Yep.
But the other thing is those SOPs save time.
Yes.
And time is money.
That's it. That is it. Mm-hmm. Time is money. Okay, one other quick announcement, and then we're going to get to the Frontlines report. We just got back from the Mid-States HPBA Burn and Learn in Sandusky, Ohio, their annual conference where we spoke a couple of times. It was great to see some of you there. Thanks for coming up and just introducing yourselves and saying hi. Glad to hang out with you guys and bring some value and present to you about the subjects that we talked about. I think that in the coming months, we're going to be taking some of the content that are in these sessions we've been doing this spring and really distill them down into some valuable courses and things that we can offer through Blue Collar Proud. Now that we've written our book and we've got 10 principles, where the book is built around, the 10 principles for building a kick-ass business you love. We're going to be able to start really drilling in and providing some great content around those principles. So Next up, though, real quick, we're going to the Southeast HPBA Conference in St. Simons Island, Florida. And that's going to be June 8th and 9th coming right up. We'll be doing a presentation there as well. I know we've got lots of friends, lots of clients, but also some folks we've never met who are listening to the show, and we'd love to meet you. So come attend our presentation and hang out with us, talk with us, and let us know who you are.
It's always fun.
We take you now to the front lines in the ongoing battles of blue-collar business. Reporting from the trenches are the blue-collar proud advisors, coaches, and mentors leading the charge. Today's report comes from Kenny Chapman with the Blue Collar Success Group. It's good to have you with us, sir. What are you seeing out there, Kenny?
Oh, thanks, guys. It's always an honor to have a little time to play with you guys, and we appreciate the opportunity. So one of the things that I think we need to look at is, I joke about it when I'm training from the stage and talk about, the whole soft skills thing, the whole, whether it's in sales and empathy or connection with a client or a team member. We need to remember, here's the thing. People don't work for companies. They work for people. Clients don't do business with companies. They do business with people. And most of us come up and, from my past, very, very kind of challenged, checkered history. And please don't run a, what do you call it? A police report or background check. Don't do a background check on me, right? But the reality is we come from this hardened, space of having to fight on the playground, and then we get into where we're leading people and team and influencing clients and different things. And sometimes we forget that at the end of the day, everything is about communication. And the top producers in our space are the best educators and the best leaders. And, I believe in magnets when it comes to culture. And I believe that we have a magnet that attracts certain people. And what else does a magnet do? It repels certain people. And I come from, in all transparency, I used to throw tools and curse out my team. And literally, I would never have worked for me. I mean, there's no way. And then as you evolve and you start to develop, we don't want to let that guard down, because some of us, that's how we feel that we got to wherever we are, was by fighting the fight. But my gosh, take a step back, relax, realize that everybody's doing the best they can. People are good. We have the challenge with the millennials now. We'll put that in air quotes, right? Oh, they don't want to do anything. They're driving our lives. Are you kidding me? They're so amazing when it comes to what they want for technology. But some of us, I'm considered a Gen X, if you will, but, it's like, oh, well, no, the millennials are lazy. They don't want to work. Well, actually, their laziness is driving some really cool technology, and how we relate with them is going to be what our future looks like, right? So it's all about these soft skills on some level.
Yeah, I tell you, one of the things that you brought up, I think, is really important, is about you not being the person that you would work for. That you wouldn't work for you. And I think if we all look at ourselves that way, what we find is that we all have challenges in communications. I don't care who we are. You can be the best communicator in the world, and yet in any given day have issues with communication. I've heard Deepak Chopra. I've heard a lot of people that you would think are tremendous communicators say the same thing. And they're just, on any given day, you can screw it up. But it's having the empathy and the compassion for others is also something that you need to do for yourself, is have the empathy and compassion on yourself. So here's something that I'm going to ask you that I'm curious about, because, blue collar guys are always considered to be gruff, rough and tumble guys. They're the guys that get her done. That they're those kind of guys. So soft skills are considered more feminine. I mean, I've heard this before. So how do you tell somebody that has this persona of being rough and tough that they really need to develop these soft skills when they view it as a more feminine type thing? How do they overcome that misconception?
So that's a great question, and I think as we solve that, we solve a lot of challenges in our industries, in our space, and and you're absolutely right. We have this front or persona of what we have to be, but the reality is, as you know, and as you break down into people, like it goes back to the old school thing of you got the little bully on the playground kind of a thing, and you sock him in the nose straight away, and then everybody else is like, whoa, what's going on, right? And so for us, it's kind of a thing that we don't want to call it soft skills. We don't want to say that I have a heart and that I feel pain and I struggle with confidence and I'm not sure if I'm worthy of the success that I have. But that's the real conversation that's going on. And all of a sudden you start having things happen and you're building blue collar businesses that are serving your life and serving others, and all the way to family can try and pull that down and go, well, how are you worthy of this? And you get challenged and you feel like, oh my gosh. But the reality is all of us have this challenge with how we feel about ourselves. And most of the time it comes up as a front and, oh, I'm going to be this rough, tough, and I'm going to go home and cry in bed. I mean, that's literally, so let's be honest. The word that comes to me that I really hang my hat on is authenticity. And you guys have had me on your show enough to know that I tell the truth and I'm transparent and I have a checkered past and I've struggled in my life and I don't have it all figured out. I'm doing the best I can, but I continue to learn every day. And I think when you really connect to being authentic and being open and honest with yourself, then I believe you start attracting the team around you that really wants that kind of a life.
Authenticity is a magnet. You've used that word before too, but I mean, it does attract. It is when people see who you really are, and that even when what you really are is not perfect, it's real, and people are drawn to that.
Absolutely. And I think, and don't even get me going on perfectionism, because I believe it is the number one productivity killer on the planet. But we have this fake, false kind of perception in our heads that now I'm an owner, now I'm a leader, I've got to be perfect. Get that out of your head and go just get things 80% right and rock and roll and figure it out on the way. But that whole perception of perfection holds us back because we think, well, everything's got to be right before we launch or before we add a line or before we go into a different market or geography or whatever it is. And the reality is it's never going to be right. Let's just do the best we can.
Yeah, that's good. Kenny, yay. I know people are going to want to connect with you online. Where would you send them to do that?
Find us at thebluecollarsuccessgroup.com. Just thebluecollarsuccessgroup.com. We got a lot of free downloads and tools that you can use to help you improve your business and your life.
Good stuff. Talk to you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
You've got questions. We've got answers. I wish I could do like a Clint Eastwood, not Chet. What was I thinking?
Chet Atkins.
Chet Eastwood, yes.
Yeah, there you go.
I just lost all my...
You lost all credibility.
Credibility.
Yeah, you did. You did, right there. Oh, well.
Wish I could do more voices is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so this is an interesting one. Talking about customer expectations. I love that you send me articles and emails that you're a part of, because you get a lot. You've really invested and signed up in a lot of different people's email lists, and get good value from that.
That's if you're gonna ever think that you're gonna go to the next level without reading other people's stuff, you need to give it up, because it's what you know. I mean, you got to get out there and you got to read. You got to invest some time. So
you sent me one from a guy named Shep Hyken, who's a number one New York Times bestseller and a great speaker. He puts out a weekly, I guess, newsletter, monthly. I'm not sure.
Gosh,
Anyway.
Yeah, probably bi-weekly.
So he talks about things that are going on. He's all about customer service. That is very much his forte, or what he talks about, his area, his expertise. But in this particular one, he was talking about customer expectations.
Yes.
About over-promising or setting an expectation that you can never meet. And a lot of times it's casual and it's done without even realizing that you've done it. So he talked a little bit about the importance of making sure that the copy on your website isn't, too on the what's the word when you overstate things, or the
it's overstated. I mean, here's the thing: when you put out this beautiful website and it looks like you're going to show up to somebody's house in a Rolls Royce, and you show up in a Pinto. You have set a great vision, but what they get is not the same. And a lot of people miss that. And that's not to say that you just got to be careful that the expectations that you are setting that you can meet. Okay. I think the other thing you got to be careful with is not to overstate. So it's a lot, if you understate and overdeliver is much better than overstating and underdelivering. So setting expectations is really, really important. That's just kind of the way that goes.
So in the article, he mentioned that the reason he was writing about it was because he was at a hotel, and the person who checked, the guest relations person that checked him into the hotel was going through the process of getting him checked in, and said, "Okay, well, I've put you in the best room that we have available." And he was like, "Oh, great. Well, that's super."
Do I have an ocean view?
Yeah. And they said, "Oh, well, would you like a room with a view? We can upgrade you."
Yeah.
He was like, "Well, I thought you said I got the best room available." And she said, "Well, what I meant was you got the best room available in the price
range you're willing to pay for
that you signed up for." And he was like, "What an opportunity you had."
Yeah.
And you just blew it because you overstated what you were doing for me.
Right.
You set a new expectation for what I was about to get on the elevator, ride up 4 floors and get off and go to my room and find than what you needed to. And I would have been a happy customer had you not escalated my expectation unfairly or unnecessarily.
Exactly.
And I thought that was interesting. So being aware of how language affects, that seemed to be the point for me out of what he was saying, is how you talk about things, how you deliver your customer experience needs to very closely be guarded and not allow people to get really wordy about, "Oh, we're the absolute best, and I'm going to, Mrs. Smith, I'm here today, and I'm going to give you, the premier experience of all of this, and this," when really you're just there to do the thing that you're there to do.
Yeah.
And you may be causing a customer who doesn't really understand all that you do to think that you're there to do a whole lot more than you really are.
Right. I think in our world, especially, I'm going to go back to the marketing world, because I think there's so. If I'm laughing because one of the questions we ask everybody is, how do you set yourself apart in the market? And almost across the board, everybody says, we're the best. Well, okay, then I go look at reviews. If you tell me you're the best, you better have a ton of 5-star, 4.9 reviews, and the 4.9s or any negative review better have been answered, taken care of, customer service, just you're not missing hardly a thing. You do that for me, and I am fine with putting that you're the best. But if I go out and find 1-star review here and a 3-star review there, and people that are angry, and they're telling me the same thing in every review. Guy was late, was dirty, whatever it was. And then I call you back and go, apparently you're not the best, because here's what your reviews say. You got a problem. Well, you have a choice when I tell you that, because that's truth. And here's the thing. We talked about taking action, and excuses is really a way to hide from the truth. You cannot hide from the truth if you're going to correctly market your company. That's the very first thing you have to do. You have to come face to face with truth. So if you're not willing to do that, then don't market your company. And it's real important because and I'm setting an expectation here, okay? Because if you don't face the truth in your business, then you can't make the changes to be the kind of business that you want to be. All right? So you may have this idea of what you want to be. All right? I'm going to tell a story. Can I tell a story real quick? Before I got married to my beautiful wife, I did date some other people, and I dated a lady, and we spent some time with her sister and brother-in-law. And one of the things that her brother-in-law did every single Sunday was watch the Golf Channel and watch golf. He was an avid golf watcher, okay? And so one day, I just said, hey, do you play? And he goes, no, but if I did play, I'd be good. And I said, really? So how do you know that? He goes, because I've watched forever. And I'm going to tell something. I was an all-state golfer in high school. I played a lot of golf growing up. And I just kind of said, okay, and walked off. Because it's like, dude, you have no idea. If you can't get in the game, there are so many nuances that can mess that little ball up, coming and going. So it's totally unrealistic, all right? Had no idea what it took. None. See, that's what happens when you don't deal with truth. You can tell yourself all kinds of stories. You can tell yourself you're the best. You can tell yourself all kinds of just garbage. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you tell yourself. Everybody else knows the truth. And today, the truth about your business is all online. So the first thing you ought to do, if you don't know, is go online and figure it out. All right? And then start setting the expectations. Now, I've told that to people, and so I've had a guy just ask me this question. So what you really want me to do is go out and say, I suck. And I said, no. I want you to go out and say, I'm getting better. We've had some issues. There's been some hiccups, and I realize that, but I'm going to do the best I know how for you, and I'm going to make it right if anything goes wrong. And then keep your word.
Yeah, that's it.
Keep your word. And be careful with your language. Make sure you're not setting expectations that you cannot meet.
When it's just you and you're the business, a one-man show, it's pretty easy to keep a pretty tight rein on what you say and how you represent yourself in the world. But the moment you start getting employees and those employees are interacting with customers when you're not around, it becomes a little bit harder, don't you think, to control that message, to make sure they're not making promises or setting expectations that are not the kind of expectations that you want to set for your company. I mean, having a standard kind of, making sure that your employees have been drilled on how this is how we represent what we do. We never say what we do in these terms. I mean, I know in our business, we're very careful not to talk about, we'll get you to the number one spot in Google.
Right.
We don't ever say that.
Yeah.
All of our clients would love us to say it and mean it and keep our word and make that happen for them because they think that that's where the magic is, even though lately that's not where the magic is anymore. But that's the dream. That's what they want. But we're very careful not to set that expectation or to ever claim that that's what we can do for you.
Yeah, because we don't control the algorithms in Google.
Right. So, but we've had to intentionally make sure that every one of our employees understands this is a line we do not cross. We do not represent ourselves this way. We do not promise clients this result because we can't.
Yeah, and that is something. I'm going to go back on what you said, though. I think the answer to your original question is a yes/no answer, and it depends on culture and systems. So I'll go back to that. We always go back on two really, there are principles, and one of those principles is systems. Just having those systems, and then we've broken down in our book the 4 pillars of culture. And so you have to have those things in alignment in order for everybody in your company to know who you are, where you're going, all those kind of things. So I think that's really important. So yes, it's more difficult when you have employees in some respect because you have to have all that stuff in place. But when you have all that stuff in place, it's not more difficult because your employees really become an extension of you. So I think that's important to point out, and that's why it's so important to get the basic pillars of business down. Because once you get those down, it's amazing what kind of a business you can have.
Yeah. Business is no different than anything else. It's relationships and setting and managing relationship expectations in the relationship about what this relationship is about. Mm-hmm. That didn't sound right, but that's it. Everything is about setting and managing expectations.
Sure.
In any relationship context, and certainly in your business.
And in marketing, and when you've got a customer in front of you, it's even more important, I think, to make sure that the message is the correct message you want to send and one that you can surely live up to.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Our guest today was raised in the hardscrabble small-town environment of Luling, Texas, where he learned his first important leadership lesson hauling watermelons for the father of his childhood best friend, who told him the object of a horse trade is that both sides get a horse. He says it taught him that leaders, that sounds like a Texan thing, doesn't it? He says it taught him that leaders in business and in life understand how to negotiate win-win solutions. He went on to spend 13 years in the United States Air Force and founded Triangle Performance, where he teaches organizations these lifelong lessons in leadership. He's a Texan now, so strap yourself down and see if you can hang on for the full ride with our guest on the show today, Kevin Berchelmann. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good, man. Thanks for being on. So tell me a little bit about the early days. What did you learn living there? So let's see. Luling is right between, it's near San Marcos, kind of halfway between Austin and San Antonio, right?
Oh, wow, I'm impressed.
I'm a Texan, too.
It is. It's about 15 miles from San Marcos, and it's kind of, triangulated in between San Antonio and Austin. You're absolutely correct. There aren't too many people that know it. You either like barbecue or watermelons.
Yeah, that's right. It's true. Well, do you know where Hondo is?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, that's old stomping ground. My uncle was a dairy farmer in Hondo, so I spent many a summer out there.
When I was in the Air Force, I was in Del Rio, Texas for about 3 years. So I passed your stomping grounds many a time. So.
Well, that's fun. It's all good.
Well, tell us a little bit about the early days then, some of the lessons you've learned and how you have kind of built Triangle Performance in what you're doing now.
Holy smokes, early days. Wow. So I can go all the way back to I was born a small child, but that's probably too far back. I can tell you one of the interesting things that I did do was there were a couple of people that I went to high school with. I hate to go back that far. I'll move quickly through it, but who've impacted me still today. And I go back to that, and I say that because even though I may have a whole bunch of credentials and degrees now, I like to tell people that I graduated 51 out of my class, and a lot of these big city people, when they hear that, they get all impressed, and then they ask me how many people were in my class, and I tell them 52. And it's not near as impressive when I have to say it that way.
Yeah, I hear you.
But I didn't really see the significance or importance, and the reason I'm telling you that is there were a couple of people who saw in me what I didn't see in me, and that probably was kind of the formulation for me that kind of got me pointed in a direction that I'm in now. Joined the Air Force, was not a good person when I joined the Air Force, spent about 4 years and was ready to bail out. Did my enlistment and was ready to leave. And some significant events occurred within that I won't go into too deep. Let's just say they follow a pattern when I was growing up and getting in trouble. And it prevented me from having the opportunity to have an assignment that I really wanted. I was considering re-enlisting, but only if I got an assignment I wanted. And they came down and gave me the assignment, and then I got in a little bit of trouble, and my commander and first sergeant set me down and said, you can't go unless you do some things to help us, because right now you're just more of a problem than you're worth. So that I did that, and it got my attention to a degree that really at that point I was probably 22 years old, and it just changed my focus entirely. So from that point forward, I've just become a student of leadership, and I learned a whole lot in the military, a lot of, military leadership, corporate leadership, not-for-profit leadership, construction leadership, high-tech leadership. We carve all these things out like there's huge differences. And the reality is leadership in general hadn't changed much in a couple of thousand years. Some of the demographics have changed, so we shift a little bit about how we deal with people. But in reality, it's the blocking and tackling that we tend to need to focus on that we don't. When we get in trouble, it's not because of, we didn't manage our engagement statistics well enough or something like that. When we get in trouble, it's because we didn't talk to people well, we didn't listen to people, we didn't resolve conflict, we forgot to manage performance.
That is so true. I mean, there's a certain set of nuts and bolts about leadership that it all comes down to that. And if that's not done well, it doesn't matter who you're leading or what background they are or anything. It's just you're not leading.
No, and it really doesn't. It's funny because I work with people and they'll ask me, "What about this book, Kevin? Have you seen this book?" I thought it's pretty interesting. So the problem I have with most leadership books, and they're either written by consultants who are trying to use it to get business, of which I are one, or academics who don't have any business writing it to begin with. But one of those two people is going to write a book, and I have to tell you what they do is they take what we've been doing for 20 years, and they call it something different, give a couple of new examples, put a little spin on it, and they put it in a glossy hardback, and off it goes. And people read those books, and they kind of get engrossed in them, and all of a sudden they get to thinking that how smart they really are because they've been doing that for 20 years. Well, of course you have, because it's not new. It's just not new, so...
That's good. One of the things that is new, though, and you talk a little bit about this in some of your work, it's this entire emerging workforce that's coming around. I guess the world typically calls them the millennial generation. And if I'm to take what you're saying is that leadership is leadership is leadership, it doesn't matter who it is or what generation or anything else, then leading millennials really at the end of the day doesn't look a whole lot different than good leadership of any other group. But there are some specific things that are unique to this generation. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. For starters, when I talk about generations, I generally start off by saying that we've had generational problems since we've had generations. So having problems between generations and miscommunications between generations is not new, and I think you guys know that. But what is different now is we're dealing with just a series of generations. So if you're not a baby boomer, forget all the labels. If you aren't someone who is north of, say, I don't know what the cutoff is anymore, but north of, say, 45. If you're not in that, if you're below that, then you probably look at life a little bit differently. Now, I say that, but I say it with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek because, I've worked with too many people. I have too many clients and too many friends, and I talk to too many people. The needs, the wants aren't that different. What a millennial, so we'll use the label for a little while, what a millennial wants out of the workforce is not hugely different than what I wanted out of the workforce, XX years ago. What's different today is these people, these generations that are younger than me, these generations, they're prepared to actually act on their wants and desires. If they don't get them, they're prepared to leave.
Mm-hmm.
We grew up believing that no, you stuck it out. You weathered the storm. You paid your dues. We had so many catchwords and phrases for sitting around a place that we didn't like, doing a job we weren't happy with. We had so many catchphrases for that we just turned it into how life was, kind of a culture for a generation. It doesn't make it true. It doesn't mean that we were any happier, and it doesn't mean that we were actually being more successful using every measure. And I think that's what we're seeing today is we have a group of people who want what we wanted, only unlike us, they're willing to act to get it. They insist on it.
So, Kevin, one of the things that I've kind of observed, and I just want to see what your take is on this, is I think a lot of it comes from the fact that the people coming up in that age group have seen their parents do everything that we were supposed to have done. I mean, I've got kids in their 30s and grandkids. So they've seen their parents do all the work and stay with the companies and not receive the reward or that was expected, mainly because there was the downturn. There's been some economic lack of growth. I mean, I graduated from high school in 1975, where the average wage was $10 an hour, and I worked for $10 an hour after I graduated, and there are people right now going to work for about $10 an hour. So the wages haven't increased. So we haven't seen the advancement like they did, in the World War I and II era, and that expands the industrial age. So I think that's one reason that they're so quick to leave, is to say, nope, this is not going to work. I'll just go elsewhere.
I think you are spot on too. I think, and I'm the same. I graduated high school in 1977. So, I thought, now I didn't make $10 an hour when I graduated. So, you obviously were in a different spot than I was.
Well,
I probably didn't get in as much trouble and have to do the things that I did.
Well, I'll tell you, I was a swimmer, so I was a lifeguard, and so the lifeguards got paid pretty good. I was high paid, so and I admit to that.
But your point is still well made,
Yeah.
in that the income growth has not kept up with the cost of goods by any means. And you're right. If you start like people who were born from 75 to 90, they have seen we used to call something all the time, we call it the employment contract. They've seen that shift from something that was a win-win to where it was a lose-lose. It was both sides are out for themselves, and they're willing to do whatever it takes. I mean, we have CEOs of massive organizations who I'm not casting them all out. I'm just saying that they're so quick to respond to analysts who grumble about short-term results, and next thing you know, they'll lop off a couple thousand people, and if they've got 150,000 employees, lopping off 2,000, they think they're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
And you are, unless you're one of those 2,000. So the employment contract changed completely. You've got longevity now. You're guaranteed employment for just about as long as it takes for you to get to work and get home. And everything in between there is based on some of it's based on you, obviously, as long as you keep providing value.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot you'll probably still be there, but man, oh man, you just look at some events in the last 10 years. You look at the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009. You look at the oil dump in 2014, and still going forward now. You had people who were plenty good in those times who lost jobs through no fault of their own. So you're right. They have seen things happen. They have seen our dedication and loyalty not be rewarded, and in fact, just almost flipped off.
So the environment has changed quite a bit, and like you said, the employment contract or agreement, between employer and employee, it can become very adversarial, us versus them sort of thing. But leadership still being leadership, how do you lead in that new environment?
Well, you lead in the new environment the same way you were supposed to be leading in the old environment. Many of us weren't doing it that way then, but now we really have to. So what you used to read about in good leadership 25 years ago, now you've actually got to execute to it. It's no more kind of playing around with it, because we have audiences today that expect it. We like to call them entitled. We call them all sorts of things that labels make us happy. But the reality is it's still the blocking and tackling. Only now we can't roll our eyes at it. We actually have to do it. Some basics, you take younger generations, younger than me, they want to know what's expected of them. Well, we say we always wanted that. Mm-hmm. Right, but how often did we not get it? How often did we come home, I'm not sure what I was supposed to do, or I made a mistake. Why'd you make a mistake? Well, I didn't know what he wanted. The difference is now we have people who just aren't okay with that. Yeah. So setting clear expectations, that's one place it's got to start. We have to do that. And we have to do it in a manner we haven't done it before.
I think the other thing that we have to do is when as leaders, we've got to tell people what we really want. We can't assume that they somehow know what we want by osmosis. And I think that's huge.
I think it is too. I think, and my oh my, you want to talk about just a blight on organizations today is assuming that people are aware of something, assuming they know what we want. It's been probably one of the Achilles heels for leaders for decades. Now, of course, it comes to the forefront as being something that's very obvious. But those clear expectations, we have to be crystal clear. They have to know what we want. That ties into, by the way, that most of us, particularly if we've achieved some form of leadership progression in our lives, we like to say things like we're results people, because that sounds good. You get around a bunch of people and you pour yourself a drink and you say, we're results people. And that sounds good, except many of us really aren't. We say we are, but we're not. If we're results people, then we should be able to tell somebody, walk right up to an employee and say, I want these 4 things. These are the results that I need, and I'm going to trust you to do them. Now, there's other things that go in, right? You've coached them. There's a level of trust already there. You don't send them out on their own. You give them whatever tools they need. You do the correct empowerment steps to make sure that they can succeed. But then you let them do their job. Mm-hmm. Well, we're okay. We're okay all the way up to that last part,
right?
Because many of us, you can do your job, but I want you to do your job my way. And if you don't do it my way, I'm probably going to have a discussion with you about why you're doing it the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And by the way, even if I was pretty clear on my expectations, and even if you do them, if you're done by noon, I'm really not too keen with not seeing your face anymore for the rest of the day.
Right.
So we're results as long as the results are met in manners that we're accustomed to.
Mm-hmm.
You've got people now who they take a direct route. If there's a little axiom called Parkinson's law. It's where work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion. Mm-hmm. It's a truism. If you give somebody 4 hours to do something, they're going to take 4 hours. You tell them I'm going to cut your head off. If you don't get it done in 2 hours, here comes the miracle, because they're going to get it done in 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And we were used to filling a day, the 8 to 5 day, 9 to 5, whatever, we filled those days. Now, this whole work-life balance thing that we thought was just kind of a passing fancy is a huge part of generations younger than me, and they want some of that. And they'll actually come to work and work for a set period of time, for a brief period of time, and they expect to see something for that. If they're working circles around somebody who's just spending time all day, they really kind of expect to see themselves rewarded in a different manner.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So the other thing that I want to talk about with leadership, and we've got this whole thing in our country with the fake news and these type of things that are going on. One of the things that I see a lot of times, and I've seen growing up, you and I are about the same age, is that a lot of business owners tend to live in their own little world that they've made. They don't deal with the financials. They don't deal with people. They don't set good expectations. They really struggle with looking at what is real in their business to be able to make decisions and good decisions. So can you talk about that and how, as leaders, how do we change those perspectives in ourselves? Because we all have the tendency to do that because we all want to live in our own worlds, and that's okay. I'm not gonna say that I'm any different because I find myself having to shake myself up sometimes as well.
Right.
But
right,
but
me too.
tell me, have you seen or noticed the same things, and how can we really be clear in our businesses? Because as leaders, we've got to be clear to make good decisions.
Well, I think it's the clarity, and it's also understanding the business and realizing that if you did your hiring job right, you probably got some reasonably smart people who, if you'll allow them, will probably provide input to you that's valuable. One of the places where especially smaller business owners tend to trip up is going through great efforts. I'm working with some right now, by the way, who are going through great efforts to hire some people, and we're really looking for top-notch people for them. That's the good news. The bad news is they've really got to get better at taking input from those people. If you hire at the top of the food chain, if you really hire good people, then for Pete's sake, take their input. Ask them for their input all the time. And I know a lot of people think, well, yeah, but Kevin, if I ask for input and then I don't take their idea, then they're going to be offended. And here's something I know to be true. If you ask 3 to 5, 10 people, however many, if you're always asking them for input, the chances are pretty good that you're going to get conflicting advice from that group. Everyone's not going to say the same thing. You're going to get different suggestions. So you can't possibly implement every bit of it. But what you can do is you can filter that into your thinking machine and use that to come up with whatever solution that you might, whatever decision that you might. Better to have more input than to have less, and you're paying for it anyway. Why not insist on it? 2 things will happen. You'll get smarter, and you'll have employees that'll be happier. Employees like to give input. Everybody likes to be heard. So they want to give you some input, even if it's not great input. I have to tell you, sometimes even a blind squirrel gets a nut and they get lucky. So
Well, and one of the things that I know is that when you ask someone, when you're the boss, when you're the leader, and you ask someone who's your direct report what they think, should be done in a particular situation, how do we solve this problem? They suddenly become invested in the solution in a new way, right?
Oh, you are so right.
And so now they're thinking about the problem in a way that they maybe never have thought about it before. From an owner perspective or from a leadership perspective, you're inviting them to step up, into a new role and reason through a problem in a new way. And that engagement is the number one thing that the millennial generation, this new generation of workers, will say that they're looking for, is the ability to contribute at a higher level. Call it entitlement. They feel like they should be able to, or whatever you want to call it. But if you can tap into that strength and that power, man, you've got an inexhaustible workforce.
Well, and you hit on so many different things there. And how many owners and even just execs in large companies, how many have said, I wish people would take more of an ownership role of this, act more like owners, act like it's theirs, act like it's their money, act like it's their resources. How many times have I heard it? It's just hundreds. And I think you're spot on that degree of feedback and input creates that level of ownership. The hard part, it's been my experience that the hard part of empowering people, of really allowing people to have inputs and actually affect some of the decisions around them, the hardest part is to say yes. I've worked with a lot of people who've gotten better at they come to them with a question and I've told them forever, if you're forever answering every question, you'll forever be answering every question. So you got to change that. So they'll pick up on that, and someone will come to them with a question, and they'll say, well, what do you think? Or what do you think we should do? Or what would you do? Or what do you suggest? And those are good starts. The hard part, though, is when they suggest something that 2 things. 1 is not going to start a fire, but 2 is not what you would like to do. Can you say yes? Because if you can say yes, I'm going to go back to your first comment, they're vested in it. If you take a smart person whose idea that you are telling him he can go forward with, he or she can go forward with, whatever it takes, they're going to make sure it's successful. Brute force, whatever, they're going to make sure that they succeed. So you actually wind up with a couple of learning moments for them, which is another big part of kind of what the millennials are looking for. You end up with a couple of learning moments. One, you had the conversation before you sent them off to do it anyway. So, and you had the conversation where they came up with a suggestion. And two, if they suggested in doing it a way that isn't quite what you've seen with your experience, they managed to pull it off. There's another learning event where you can say, great, very impressive, glad you did that. Something to think about in the future, because here's what's worked for me. But saying yes, allowing people to do things, even if you know from your experience it might not be the perfect way. That can be a tough lesson to learn for some of us old folk.
Well, so I'm the parent of a 10-year-old son, and I'm listening to you and going, yeah. Sometimes leadership in business is not much different than raising a child, and not to demean the workforce, those that work for us in any way, but I just mean sometimes you've got to give somebody the ability to take ownership, fail if they need to, in order to learn a valuable lesson. And so long as they're not catching the house on fire or running out in traffic, then you have a real opportunity to help them, in their own journey.
And I just want to say real quick about the failure part. I think you have to give people the ability to fail, because sometimes they're going to surprise you and they're going to succeed beyond your wildest dreams.
Right.
Because they're thinking about stuff that you've never thought of.
Right. And sometimes process failure, where somebody says, I want to do something differently, sometimes process failure can spur new thinking, new ways of doing things. You mentioned failure and mistakes. One of the CEOs of a small company that they've got operations in Mexico. I go to Mexico quite frequently with them. And the CEO is really fond of saying, you guys aren't making enough mistakes. Now, you don't get that a lot from CEOs. But that's what he means is you're just not taking the risks that you ought to be taking. Our growth isn't what it could be because you're not taking the risks. I'd rather pay for a mistake or two than I would never make a mistake. He's adamant about that as well. So it's an interesting lesson if you think about it, but it's very difficult for people who grew up just behind us, whatever generation that is. It's difficult for them to sometimes make that segue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Carter, you mentioned about children. It's not unusual at all. I mean, there's the reason leadership and parenting are so similar, and of course you can't say that in the workforce because everybody gets their panties in the wad about it. But, but the reality is it's just human behavior. You're just influencing human behavior. And the same things that work at home work at work because it's just human behavior. You can see it more clearly with a 3-year-old than you can with a 35-year-old, but it's still just human behavior.
And that really is what leadership is. It's being able to talk to and influence the people around you to make progress.
Bring out their best.
To make progress and bring out the best in everybody in your business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a great conversation. And Kevin, I know we could probably go for 2 hours, and we definitely want to have you back on the show again. But unfortunately, we've got to tidy this one up and bring it to a close. So I'm curious. I want to make sure that those who are listening out there can connect with you. Where would they go to do that?
You can reach me through absolutely just any vehicle available. So my email is Kevin B, KEVINB, at triangleperformance.com, one word. Phone number 281-257-4442. And just a simple search will find me on LinkedIn or Twitter, either one.
Awesome.
Fairly active on all those.
Well, you've been a great guest, and we always like to ask our guest at the end for a quote that has meant something to them in their own business journey of success. I'm wondering what your quote would be, and if you'd share it with me. I hear you laughing, and you told me before the interview started that I needed to be careful what I asked for, so I'm braced, man. I'm ready.
So little background. I was raised with 4 sisters, a mother and a grandmother in a 2-bedroom house in Luling, Texas. And my mother was fond of saying, and she told me this more times than I could possibly count. But my mom would say, "Kevin, you can't help stupid people." And I say it now when I talk to people, and some people get a little offended because you're not supposed to say stupid anymore. Some people laugh hysterically because Ron White co-opted it with his stupid should hurt and all these other things. But the reality was what she meant by that, because it always came out in conversations. She didn't just throw it out as a pithy response to nothing. So it always came out in a conversation where someone who was working against themselves, who obviously understood what help would look like, but was either declining the help or hearing the help and still acting differently. And she was just really fond of saying, "Kevin, you just can't help stupid people." And it is. I can't tell you. I do not have a client. If any of my clients listen to this, they'll all nod their head because every one of them has heard it.
That's true. You can help someone who's ignorant, who just doesn't know.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. They're easy, as a matter of fact. They're the easiest thing to fix is people that don't know something. So
Yes.
But stupid is someone who knows differently, who's been exposed to something that could help them and chooses a different path. I like that. That's actually really profound.
Yeah, I would agree.
If my mom ever knew that I called it profound, though, she'd be rolling in her grave right now.
Yeah, well, believe me, I've got a few of those myself. Kevin Berchelmann, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Carter, you and Taylor both, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, he's a laid-back Texan, wasn't he?
Just like I remember growing up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff, though.
Really good stuff. I got to tell you, my takeaway is this quote.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. I mean, you really can't help stupid people. And as someone that, when you're responsible for leadership and taking care of people and doing what you got to do, you got to really figure out if they want it or not. I mean, the people that know better and they just don't do it, you can't help those people. You just got to move on.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, it seems like every time we have a guy or someone on, a guest on, and they're talking, it's the thing that's out of left field that has nothing to do with really what they came on the show to talk about. That ends up being my takeaway. Parkinson's Law. Work expands to fill the time you're given to complete it. There's this tendency for whatever it is that you've got to do, it's going to take exactly the amount of time that you have to do it in. Doesn't matter.
And that's really funny because it's a conversation that I actually had with one of our employees last week and didn't know it was a law, but it's exactly what we talked about. And it's like, it doesn't matter how much time I give you, you're going to do whatever within that allotted time, so you're fixing to get more stuff.
Yeah, right.
Because I know you can do more. Yeah. Same
good.
kind of a thing.
Yeah, we'll
awesome.
definitely have Kevin back on.
Yeah, it was great.
All right, Proud Nation, the quickest way for you to make these ideas your own is to share them. Once taught, twice learned. That's the saying around here. So if you want to learn this and retain it, then the easiest way to do that is to share it with other people. You can do that over in the Blue Collar Proud Nation Facebook group. Simply do a search on Facebook for the Blue Collar Proud Nation. Ask to join that group. You'll be let right in, and then look for the post that says Kevin Berchelmann episode takeaways. And in the comments of that post, just tell us what it is that you got from this particular episode. Share it with other people, and by doing that, you're going to remember it better yourself, be able to take that and apply it into your own life. And of course, you can always find out more about all the other places where you can connect with us by simply going over to bcpshow.com/connect. That's it for this episode of the Blue Collar Proud Show. As always, Taylor and I want to thank you for listening. We also want to thank the people that make this show happen every single week without fail. Aaron Blaze, our technical director, Jessica Wynn, our show coordinator, and Jonathan Sanders and Karen Hatcher, our social media managers. Until next time, remember, it takes the same amount of time and energy to build a business you hate as it does to build one you're proud of. So why not build it the Blue Collar Proud way?
The Blue Collar Proud Show is a production of the Blue Collar Proud Network.